Welcome to Inspiring Business with your host, Mark Bullock, who is the co-founder of videosocials.net and of videointerviewpodcast.com. In every episode, Mark interviews business and organizational thought leaders who share their stories of how they inspire others by making a difference. You can find this show on videosocials.net and YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and almost any podcast platform of your choosing.
Welcome, and today my guest is my friend Neil Tyra, and Neil is the owner of the Tyra Law Firm LLC in Rockville, Maryland, where he does estate planning, probate administration, and is a family law attorney for regular folks like you and me. Hi, Neil. It's great to have you.
Great to be here, Mark. Appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. And full disclosure, Neil has been a member of Video Socials, which is the sponsor of this video for some time now, and we'll make some mention of that later on. But I've got to see you create quite a bit of content, a number of videos, and enjoyed your participation in that. So I know a little bit about you and what you do. Yeah. So I was really
I just posted a Video Socials video literally an hour ago.
Fantastic.
So it's very timely. Yeah.
So as I think everybody, we're not all in our first careers or our first on our first rodeos. By the time we get a few gray hairs going on.
I got that.
And that is I'm sure your story. And I always like to start with, what is your story? How did you get into to become have a family law practice?
Well, it's a circuitous route. There are folks who would suggest that I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. As a matter of fact, law is my fourth career. So I started off way back when, and by back when, I mean a long time ago, because I'm really old. I started off way back when cooking for a living. So if you ate anywhere in the Annapolis, Maryland area in those days, chances are there was a fair opportunity that I cooked a meal for you. I cooked in a lot of really wonderful and high-end restaurants. And I thought that was going to be my life's calling, was to stay involved in the kitchen and make that a career. But I had the opportunity to go to work in a completely different environment. I went to work in the space program for NASA. And so I spent a long chunk of my life working for NASA and the Department of Defense in the space program, later in air defense world, basically as a systems engineer and running. It evolved over the course of time. But in the beginning, I worked at the Goddard Space Flight Center, which is kind of like the Johnson Space Flight Center in Houston, only in Greenbelt, Maryland. And it primarily supported the unmanned satellite programs of the United States. And that was a job, I tell people, that I really would have done for free had they asked me. It was just about the coolest thing ever. And if you can imagine some of those scenes from, say, the Apollo 13 movie or some of the recent TV shows where you're in the control center wearing a headset, communicating with resources around the world in real time. That's what I did. I went on to become what was called a launch director. Literally, when I was just barely old enough to vote, was controlling all the downrange assets of NASA during their unmanned satellite launches, which was admittedly pretty cool. I did that for a long number of years. And all the while, I was a practicing martial artist. I practiced a Japanese form of karate called Goju-ryu. Mm-hmm. And I got to the point where, after 20 plus years in the information technology world, I was looking to do something a little different. And so I semi-retired from that area, and I opened a commercial martial arts studio, the Kenshin Karate School. And I was lucky that took off pretty quickly. And I spent many years teaching children, teens, and adults the traditional form of Japanese karate, which was a great passion of mine at the time, and loved doing all of that. But all along the way, I had toyed with the idea of going to law school. Because, the law touches on so many aspects of our life that I couldn't get away from the fact that it didn't matter which industry I was pursuing a career in, there were legal aspects to all of that. And so it was always kind of in the back of my mind. And then I had two friends later in their life attend law school, and they were kind of a role model for me. So
Mhm.
I was looking at the landscape, and I had two children, still have two children, um, but they were getting ready to enter into high school and college. And I thought, if I don't get in front of them, there's going to be no money left. So I said, well, let me just see if I can even get into law school. I had no idea even how to go about it. But I was lucky enough to go through all those steps and be admitted to the Columbus School of Law at the Catholic University of America, right here in the Washington, D.C. area. And so now I had a decision to make. What do I do? I got into law school. I'm going to try and go part-time, full-time, or what? So at that point, my body was telling me it was time to hang up my black belt, and so I sold my martial arts school reluctantly, but that was allowed me to go to law school full time. So I treated it like a job. I got up in the morning, I went to the school, I was there by 9 o'clock, regardless of when my classes were. I worked all day at school. I came home at 6. I had dinner with the family, had some social time, and then spent my evening hours doing what's necessary to get through law school. It wasn't easy, but I enjoyed every bit of it, and I was lucky enough to graduate. And at that time, I was working in the state's attorney's office as an intern, and I thought that's what I was going to do, was going to put bad guys in jail. And I was offered a job when I graduated, passed the bar, uh, but I had a little crisis of confidence. I wasn't quite sure whether that was where I wanted to be. By the way, I was the oldest one in my law school
Mm.
class by a long shot. I mean, I entered law school at the age of 48 and graduated at 51. Um, so I had just a little crisis of confidence. I didn't know if I wanted to work here in the local community. So I said, well, let me see what's out there for, a 50-year-old brand new associate. And what I found is that there wasn't much. Was it age discrimination? Well, I think technically it was, but on the other hand, have to think about law firms making an investment in an associate. They really want to make an investment with somebody who's going to be around for a long time.
Yeah.
And when the hiring member of a law firm is 30 years younger than the applicant, it raises questions. And so I found that there wasn't really a lot of opportunities there, but I did get an offer from a small boutique personal injury law firm in downtown Washington, D.C., and I'd never worked downtown. So I thought, well, this sounds interesting. This sounds fun. So I went to work for that firm doing, car accident cases, bread and butter car accident cases. That
Mm-hmm.
kept me in the courthouse. And that was the start of my legal career. But then, as I said, I had a couple of children, and my youngest, my son, was a very accomplished athlete, and he was getting ready to go into high school, and I knew he had a chance of starting uh, on varsity in two different sports, soccer and wrestling. And so I wanted to be able to see all of his games and matches, and I didn't want to have to ask an employer for the time off. So I had already owned a business, a karate school, and I thought, well, how much more difficult can owning a law practice be? So I decided to leave the firm that I was with on good terms and open my own practice. And so that's what I did. The Tyra Law Firm was launched in 2007, and I've been at it ever since. I started off doing personal injury work, but then because I didn't have enough misery in my life, I added family law. and I really, in a lot of ways, I like family law because I kind of focused on the people who were getting bullied. It was kind of like my self-defense, my karate mentality. Didn't like the bully, so I focused on those cases, mostly involving women, but not always the case, where they were being taken advantage of. And so standing up to the bully was something that I enjoyed doing. But at the end of the day, after a few years of that, now my kids have grown and moved away. So I had no reason to really stay in town. I wanted to be able to practice my law from wherever my feet were standing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're tied to the courthouse, doing litigation is difficult to do. So I started making the transition then to estate planning and helping people create their wills and their trusts, and powers of attorney and healthcare directives and those kinds of things. And that's what I've been doing for the last several years. And it's been really rewarding and really kind of fits where I am in my life and in my journey to a T. So I couldn't be happier to now offer estate planning services and some estate administration services. I do keep a little bit of family law. You mentioned my biggest role in the family law space is to advocate for prenuptial agreements. So if you've done as many divorces as I have, you understand the value of a prenuptial agreement or even a postnuptial agreement. So I still do those, and I do guardianships and adoptions. So some of the fun things in family law. But that's how the milk got in the coconut, as my mother would say.
Well, it's incredible to me. First of all, those of us who have had multiple careers, wherever that we've landed at, we bring all of that life experience, all that work experience with us, and I think it makes us more well-rounded individuals, and more well-rounded if we're in the advice business, if we're in the, whether that be consulting, coaching, advisory type roles, which we both are. So
yeah.
And one of the things that's striking to me is that not just the number of shifts, because I've had an equal number of shifts myself, but some of the parallels. So I was born and raised in Maryland. As an example, I'm in New York now. I've always had a passion for the space program. Never been involved. I'm completely jealous that you had the opportunity to be in that world. I have 20 plus years in the IT industry at a very high level, while working my way up from, originally computer consulting for individuals, all the way up to network architecture, for global networks for banks and stuff.
Very similar.
So it seems like whatever we've done, we've invested ourselves in, right? And part of the Inspiring Business Podcast is about those of us that we're not just investing ourselves in it for the purposes of our own edification, but is the kind of difference that we can make for others. So, and I know that you have that as part of just your nature, because I see you shoot videos all the time through video socials, and I wanted to take just a moment, since Video Socials is our sponsor, to kind of explain what that is, and then ask your experience of it. And
sure.
What Video Socials was designed for is in becoming an entrepreneur myself, I realized I needed to be able to stand up in front of an audience. I needed to be able to present to people. I needed to get over my nervousness around public speaking. And so, some 35 years ago, I joined Toastmasters, had an anxiety attack on my first speech, just almost passed out. And from that, I decided that I was going to stick with it. I got the support and encouragement of the other members, etc. A year later, I was president of the club, and we had launched two other clubs. So fast forward to 3.5 years ago, we created Video Socials, and Video Socials had the same kind of concept in mind, in that if you're doing something difficult, like being on camera, it's not natural, right? So we're going to present information to an audience on camera. Well, how do you do that? And how do you get other people's perspectives? And how do you make that a habit? How do you make that something that's happening on a consistent basis? Because all marketing is based off of consistency, value, and connection with our audiences, as an example. So we decided to put together in small groups in a video format, or a video conferencing format. And we get together and we take turns shooting our videos and giving each other feedback and encouragement and support, etc. But I know that you had done video before you became into Video Socials. I know you've been doing marketing. You've created content. You have a blog, which we'll get into, how to find you in all those places in a moment. But what are you using Video Socials for, and how is that working out for you?
Yeah, well, let me put that just in context for me, because aside from the 4 careers that I had, I might also have a 5th ongoing career, and possibly a 6th coming up. But the 5th was that I started my own podcast, and the podcast is called The Law Entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
And we can talk about that a little more later, perhaps. But one of the things I do is I interview successful attorneys, and about what they did right, what they did wrong, what they wish they could have done differently, plus entrepreneurs and what have you. And so along the way, I knew that content marketing, and in particular the emerging aspect of video marketing, was a pathway that a lot of attorneys should be following. And I dipped my toe in it. I mean, I produced some videos and posted them on my YouTube channel and shared them on my social media channels, but I wasn't real consistent with it, and I didn't really have a overarching theme of what I was trying to accomplish. I just would shoot a video whenever the spirit moved me, and they weren't all very good. In fact, most of them were pretty crappy. And they were way too long, and I would look at it and I was like, oh my God, this is horrendous. You're defeating the purpose. So in full disclosure, I had Vic, the founder of Video Socials, I had him on the podcast. And when he described what Video Socials was all about, I went, you know what? That's really what I'm looking for, because number one, there's a consistency. We meet every Friday. And while I sometimes have to miss a Friday or so, it's there on my calendar every Friday. I'm shooting a video. And so the aspect of holding my feet to the fire to a task that I need to get done for my business was really important for me. The other thing is that they're limited to 3 minutes, which I really loved. Somebody else telling me to shut the hell up, and which I need to be told that on more than one occasion. So that worked out really well for me. And then there were a few people that I knew in the industry who were already Video Social members, Allison Williams and others, that I thought, well, boy, if they're enjoying Video Socials, I'm sure I would. And so I took that plunge and haven't regretted it, one bit. and they'll have several dozen, I don't even know what the count is, but almost a year's worth of videos on the YouTube channel and in rotation on our social media platforms. So it's been just absolutely perfect for me. Can't say enough about it.
Well, I really appreciate that, and I really appreciate the fact that of all of your contribution and all of our member contribution, because we're all learning from each other. It is an experiential learning environment, and we learn from each other. But certainly just doing videos isn't the only thing that you do. As a matter of fact, you have two websites, TyraLawFirm.com and TheLawEntrepreneur.com. You've got blogs on both of those. You have, your podcast, which remind me the name of it again.
The Law Entrepreneur.
The Law Entrepreneur. You've got a YouTube channel, Neil Tyra 8234. You're on LinkedIn, of course, Tyra Law Firm, Twitter, Neil Tyra, Facebook, the Tyra Law Firm. And folks, there'll be links to all of these things that we just mentioned associated with this, both the video podcast on YouTube as well as the audio podcast descriptions, et cetera, for this. So you don't have to remember any of that. It's all tied in. So, and I really didn't want this to be per se about marketing but I think that it is. And here's why. When you're in a high trust advisory role with people need to be able to engage with you, get to know you, like you, trust you, be familiar with you, before they're going to entrust their finances, the future of their elderly parents, their et cetera, et cetera. And you've kind of jumped into that from a standpoint of recognizing that you're not just producing infomercials. As a matter of fact, I don't think you've ever produced one, at least one that I've seen. But we're producing informational, educational tips, concepts, ideas, sometimes warnings, sometimes reminders to stop procrastinating, et cetera. But, again, tying back to the inspiring business, I was inspired too that the fact that we could create content that not only serves our purposes as far as marketing and drawing people to us, but that actually the content itself makes a difference for those that watch it, or those that read it, or whatever content that we're creating. And you embody that for me. So I really appreciate that. And something, and I don't want to take too long on it, but you did mention earlier on that there's a paradigm difference between marketing for things like estate planning versus that of, shall we say, personal injury, or frankly, most other forms of a law practice.
It's quite true. Let's face it. Most people couldn't tell a good lawyer from a bad lawyer if they stood right in front of them. They don't know what questions to ask, and they don't know how to evaluate that. And frankly, if you listen to the polls, most folks are very suspicious of attorneys, and look, for good reason in many cases. I think I saw one poll that ranked to whom you have confidence in, and attorneys were just above prostitutes. So there's a big hurdle to get over. And what happens in most legal practice areas is that something bad has happened in someone's life. They've had a car accident. They've been arrested. They've been served divorce papers. Something along those lines. It's an external event that causes them to need to go look to hire an attorney. So your job from a marketing perspective, if you're in those practice areas, is top of mind. You want, when they have that need, for them to say, oh, I know the Tyra Law Firm does this work. I've seen a lot of their advertisements. I've seen their marketing materials. I'll give them a call. So the key focus there in that marketing paradigm is to awareness and top of mind. With estate planning, the number one challenge to estate plan, getting your estate plan done, is procrastination. People put it off for a number of different reasons. One, they don't understand its importance, or two, they don't like that concept of dealing with the potential of their own death, or three, they think, well, I don't need an estate plan. I don't have anything. I'm not that well. I'm not, a wealthy mogul. And so the marketing challenge in that paradigm is one of, as you said, education. Okay? So my videos that I produce through video socials and all of my blog posts that go along with them, the whole point is to educate clients, and so that they do learn to know, like, and trust you before you ever pick up the phone. And I've had dozens and dozens of clients who, the first time I speak to them on the phone, say, I feel like I know you. I've been watching your videos for months now. You've educated me. I now know what to ask. I wouldn't have known how to approach you to get my estate plan done had I not watched all those videos. And so that's how I know my video socials videos are working. I get that feedback, and it does exactly what I need to do to address that paradigm shift.
Outstanding. And thank you for sharing that. And I couldn't be happier that, the program that Vic and I invented has that effect, and it's you, and it's just, we have phoneblogger.net, which is, now more than a decade old, and that's where, we call people and interview them. We call our clients, interview them, record that, transcribe it, turn it into a written blog article for them. So it's, it saves especially attorneys, hours and hours and hours of picking through trying to write something that takes 3 to 5 minutes to read, and it's and boils it down to 5 or 10 minutes of their time. But they are the author. They are, and it's out of a conversation, and just as you and I are having a conversation now, the audience is listening into that conversation. If in video socials, we're creating 2 or 3 minute videos that we're having a conversation with our audience. In the case of the written blog posts, again, these are not traditional marketing pieces that we're doing. We're trying to educate, to inform, and to connect with our audience, and so that they can become familiar with us. And
one of the things that this whole process has helped me refine is my mission statement. And I would not have thought that would have been the case. Most times people, marketing gurus, will tell you, you need to come up with your why, your mission statement, or your overarching theme, and then tailor your marketing to that. Well, in my case, it was actually just the other way around. When I started doing these videos, I found myself really trying to explain the estate planning process to people, to regular people, to people like you and me. And it just like, well, there it is. There it is. Hi, I'm Neil Tyra. I'm an estate planning attorney from Rockville, Maryland, and I do estate plans for regular folks like you and me.
Right.
And that gave purpose and focus to everything I do. And it really aligned with what I wanted to do. Because I will be honest with you, when I did family law, I shied away from doing high net worth divorce cases because you can make a lot of money off of them, but they were also difficult to work with. And for the same reason, I've shied away from high net worth estate plans, not because I'm incapable of doing it, but because there's more challenges and more involvement. And I feel like the greater need is for the regular guy down the street who's got a mortgage, 2 cars, and trying to put a couple kids through school and hasn't thought about what happens if he gets hit by a bus. And so I like to help those kinds of folks. And the process of going through video socials and refining my video message helped me align the the marketing theme for my whole practice, and it's been very, very illuminating.
Well, it's again the parallels, right? It's exactly the same for me. When we started video socials, I had no idea what we were going to do with it, how it was going to work, and by having these conversations, by recording with each other, et cetera, then we got to learn, and I got to learn, what this was all about. But and I think in the encapsulation of, just as you kind of closed up there with that, was that you are really wanting to work with those that really need the service the most, but don't necessarily think that, hey, I've got, a bunch of money or a bunch of properties or, a lot of assets that I need to protect and figure out. But the fact of the matter is that all of us, even those that are,
Of modest means,
kind of on the back on our heels, what's going to happen with the kids? What's going to happen with this? Who's going to handle this? Who's going, et cetera, and it really is. If I can encourage those that are listening, to have a look at your websites, to have a look at your YouTube channel, et cetera, it's that, look, we don't know what tomorrow brings. And it might be next year, it might be next month, it might be something that debilitates us rather than kills us. It might be something that it might be a temporary problem, it might be a permanent problem. We don't know what's coming about. But the sooner that you start to address it, the sooner that you start to take a look at it with the guidance of somebody like you, the better you're going to feel. Honestly, because then it's a weight that's on your shoulders right now that you don't realize.
And if you're a business owner, it's even more important, because a lot of times people will think, well, I know what I want to do for my family, but I come across so many business owners when I ask them, well, who's going to take over the business if you get hit by a bus? Oof, that's a good question. Like, I don't know. Right. And so we go through that conversation as well. And so that's an important consideration.
Of course. So we could literally go on all day, Neil. I feel like I've gotten to know you a lot better. I see even more parallels than I knew already existed. And you did want to give a shout out to Christy, and I wanted to give you the opportunity. So I'm going to let you pronounce her last name, and how do you know Christy? What's up with her?
So Christy Zlatkis, Zlat, Zlatkis. Is a good friend of mine. She owns one of the most progressive family law practices in certainly in this area, in the Washington, D.C. area. You can find them at zfamilylaw.com. And they're just really brilliant over there. Aside from just the bread and butter issues of doing family law, as most family law attorneys know, there's a certain amount of hand-holding, a certain amount of psychological support and inspirational support that we give our clients. Well, Christy recognized that need and said, you know what, I'm just going to hire a psychologist and put them on staff.
Wow.
And so that person is, part of their customer relations team, head of their customer relations team. And it's just a mind-blowing, inspirational idea. And then she extended it further when she found that she was servicing a lot of women in particular who were getting divorced. And one of the challenges they had after the divorce is, how do all the things get done around the house? Or how do I get back in the dating game and what have you? And so she hired a concierge who makes arrangements to have the plumber come, or works with them on their dating profile app. And it's a full service family law practice. And I work with a lot of family law attorneys. but I'm particularly fond of Z Family Law and Christy Slackus, who is the founder of that. And so I'm sure she'd love to chat with anybody who would like to have some insight into her really revolutionary, in my humble opinion, approaches to how to provide that client experience to a family law practice.
Well, that's fantastic. I very much look forward to meeting her, and I certainly will reach out to her. So it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on, Neil. You're a straight shooting guy, just like the rest of us, right? So I really do appreciate your discussion of some of your experience, and hopefully those in our audience that are in your area will certainly take a look at the content that you've created, because it's all free and it's all there. And if they decide that it's time to start approaching that whole concept of planning for whatever may come, then you may be the guy to work with them. Thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate, Mark, you giving me the opportunity to be on the program. I love, obviously, what you guys do and what Video Socials means to everybody. So it was a real pleasure to spend some time with you today.
Terrific, Neil. Stick around, folks.
You've been listening to Inspiring Business with your host, Mark Bullock. Your positive comments, likes, and most importantly, your sharing of this show with others is greatly appreciated. Don't forget to subscribe to the Inspiring Business Podcast on whatever platform you prefer. You can catch prior episodes on videosocials.net and on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and all the major podcast platforms.